Good evening, everyone. Thank you, all of you, for being here with us today. My name is Keith Marzullo, and I'm the Dean of the University of Maryland's College of Information Studies, which we fondly call the iSchool. I'm delighted to welcome you all to the annual iSchool Alumnus of the Year event. Before we get started, I want to let you all know that this event is being recorded, and we will post it on the iSchool's YouTube page the following week, so this can be enjoyed by everyone. Also want to note that for the Q&A session at the end of the event, please use the raise hand feature so that we can unmute you to ask your question. You can also submit questions through the Q&A feature on your screen there on the bottom. If you need clarification from the speakers during the discussion, please feel free to use the chat feature to get a quick response. Now, before we present the awards, which is the main part of this, I'd like to introduce our two speakers who will provide updates on the library and information science activities occurring at the iSchool. Our first speaker is a senior lecturer at the iSchool, as well as a program director for the Master Library Information Science program. Please introduce to you Dr. Ursula Gorham. Ursula.
Hello, everyone. So as Keith said, I'm the current director of the MLIS program. I'm thrilled to be here today to celebrate the accomplishments of not just one of our alumni, but two of them. Congratulations to both John and Julius on their many professional accomplishments. You are both so deserving of this award and demonstrate such a high level of commitment to our profession and to our field. So for me, one of the best parts of being the program director is that I get to connect with our alumni and I get to hear what they've been up to. And then what I get to do is share what our program's been up to. And that's fun for me. And so that's what I'm going to do a little bit tonight. I'll just spend a few minutes going over what we've been up to. So I am going to share my screen. So in spring 2020, right before the pandemic changed everything, literally a couple of weeks before, we were reaccredited by the ALA and continued our streak of being continuously accredited since our founding in 1965. So prior to the pandemic, our program had already been offering a mix of online and face-to-face classes. And so in many ways, our transition to remote learning was a little bit easier because we are fortunate to have faculty members and staff members and students who are all comfortable with online learning and who have experience with it. And actually, just earlier this week, our program had put out a survey to our current students to get some feedback on what the past few semesters had been like for them. And I have to admit that my heart sang a little bit when I saw a comment that our transition to online learning had been seamless. I don't know if I would go that far, but it's always nice to hear. So if you haven't been around the iSchool for a while, you may be wondering what exactly our program looks like and what our students are learning. We currently have 6 different specializations: archives and digital curation, school libraries, youth experience, intelligence and analytics, legal informatics, and diversity and inclusion. I think it's worth noting, though, that these specializations are not rigid tracks, but merely suggested paths for students who are interested in these different areas. So we made this adjustment because one of the things that we learned about our students is that they're rarely interested in just one area. I like to say that the defining characteristic of our MLIS students is that they have a lot of intellectual curiosity. And so we've made our curriculum more flexible so that they, with the guidance of our MLIS program manager and advisor, can create a plan of study that best meets the needs of the students, their career goals, and what they're looking for. Now, speaking a little bit more about our students, I'm really happy to report that we have a lot of them. Currently, we have just under 300 students, but we actually saw a boost of about 15% for the fall 2021 application cycle. And so we're excited to be welcoming approximately 100 future information professionals to our program in September. Our students come from diverse backgrounds, having majored in any number of subjects as undergraduates, and they often come to us having had one or sometimes more careers. And so it's not really surprising that their accomplishments while they're in the program are equally diverse, and they're really, really impressive. And so we have a number of students who have done presentations both on campus and at conferences around the country. We have students who have been awarded the ALA Spectrum Scholarship and the ARL Kaleidoscope Fellowship as well. And we have students who have actually published while they're still in the program. But I will say that we are regularly invested in
Paul,
our
can you
students
mute your,
developing.
Paul, can you mute?
Developing their professional networks while they're still in school. And one of the things that we've done is begin to provide them with support to attend conferences. In fact, this year, earlier, we sent a cohort of our MLIS students to ASIST, which was easier because it was online. And so in continuing with that tradition, we will be sending a cohort to the Maryland Library Association annual conference in June. And we also have a staff member that goes with them and that kind of acts as a mentor and a source of support and just kind of helping them navigate what may be their first conference experience. So the other thing that we've really been focused on is we know that the job market is a little bit uncertain right now. And so we have continued to provide them with different professional development opportunities and other ways that they can connect with alumni because we realize how valuable it is for them. And speaking of graduation, I think every program director, every really proud program director really likes to brag about where our students end up. And it's always interesting to me. And I would have loved to have shown you the slide that showed you all of the different places that they end up, but I am not going to play around with technology right now. So I'm just on a prayer right now that it doesn't cut out on me again. But anyway, so had you been able to see my slide, you would have seen that, of course, we have our graduates going to places that you would expect. So Library of Congress, a lot of the public library systems in the state, as well as a number of academic libraries. We also have a number of our students. We have a lot of students interested in archives and digital curation. So, as you would expect, we see them going to NARA and the Maryland State Archives. But there are two other things that happens with our students that I think is really interesting. So one, we can see that they end up in these quote unquote traditional institutions, but doing different things. So for example, we just spoke to an alumni earlier this week who does user experience design at the Library of Congress. And then we have students who are doing things that are really non-traditional in almost every sense when you think of what the MLIS used to be. And so we started an intelligence and analytics specialization a few years ago because we knew that we had students who were going to work in intelligence agencies, not necessarily as intelligence analysts, but it wouldn't really surprise any of us to realize that intelligence agencies, a lot of government agencies, are really interested in people that know how to organize information. And that's something that our graduates and our students really learn how to do. The other thing that I think is really important to just mention with our graduates and our alums is how much they give back to our students now. And I think that's important. And I think it's something that we value so highly. So for example, Holly McIntyre is a recent MLIS graduate, and she became the first archivist in NASA Goddard's history. And so what's even better is that Holly, in her current position, has worked to create internship opportunities for current iSchool students and enjoys serving as a mentor to these interns. And so for us, these connections with our alumni are so valuable for our students. The networks that exist, particularly in the DC and Baltimore metro areas, afford the students opportunities that honestly, in my own, somewhat biased opinion, it's really hard to beat. But I also just want to say that our students' experiences are not only enriched by the connections that they make outside of the iSchool, but also by the connections they make with the faculty members. Again, not that I'm biased or anything, but I have to say that our students are really fortunate to get to work with faculty that have such wide-ranging experiences in research and practice in a variety of fields, all of which in some way or another intersect with information, people, and technology. So at the beginning of the year, the iSchool hired 7 new faculty members, and many of them have already made really wonderful, meaningful contributions to the MLIS program and the MLIS student experience. And so I'll just give you a few examples. So we brought on Jason Barron, who formerly served as the Director of Litigation for NARA as a professor of the practice in archival science and policy. And he has taught classes in government information and records management, and has designed a new class in information governance as well that will be offered next year. We also brought onto the faculty Diana Marsh as an assistant professor. Diana had been a postdoc fellow at the Smithsonian, and she's now teaching our Intro to Archives classes, as well as teaching classes in the Museum Scholarship and Material Culture Certificate Program, of which the iSchool is a collaborator with. And then we also have Ryan O'Grady, who had been the Deputy Director of the Maryland State Library Resource Center. He joined our faculty as a lecturer, and he's been teaching classes in information organization, as well as our seminar in public libraries. And so these are just our new hires, right? And I could go on, but I hope that what I've been able to communicate is how much our faculty members are one of the driving forces behind the success of our MLIS program. And so to wrap up, I just wanted to mention a few projects and initiatives that iSchool faculty have been working on that really strengthen our MLIS program. So Victoria Van Heining, who also joined our faculty as an assistant professor in the fall, has been leading the creation of a new crowdsourcing platform that is focused on making the works of David C. Driscoll more accessible. And what she did in the class that she taught in the fall, which was a class she'd redesigned called Outreach, Inclusion, and Crowdsourcing, she allowed the students to get involved in that project. And then we also have several faculty members, including our Senior Associate Dean, Brian Butler, and Associate Professor Beth St. Jean, who have been working on a project with faculty members at the College of Journalism and the College of Education that is designed to improve the students' understanding of search and search engines. And so for our students, like in the MLIS program, this kind of works in two ways, right? One, they develop their own understanding, which is important as information professionals, but they're also then beginning to learn how they can help other people to develop their understanding, which is so important. Then we also have the newly launched Center for Archival Futures, and among a lot of other work that's being done there, they're working on enhancing the experiential learning opportunities that are available to our students interested in archives and preservation and digital curation. And then finally, Associate Professor Megha Subramaniam, since the beginning of the pandemic, has developed a comprehensive field guide that was designed to help library administration and staff through the COVID crisis, as well as other crises. Her work in this area has also led to the development of a special topics course that we offered for the first time in the winter and was really widely applauded by our students. And I end with this course because I think it really reflects one of the strengths of our program, which is our ability and our willingness to adapt to the world around us and to prepare our students to succeed in this world that sometimes, is unpredictable and is always evolving. So with that, I apologize for all of the confusion, but technology. So back to Keith.
Thank you, Ursula, for that wonderful update. There are just so many things going on in our MLIS program. And I'm a former computer scientist, so I'm just going to mention the rankings. She didn't mention it because rankings are always suspicious, but in the US News and World Report ranking, we came in as number 4 in the nation. We moved up from number 8. So, and library services of youth and children, we moved up to number 2. So we are doing very well indeed. Thank you so much, Ursula, for that wonderful update. So our second speaker, who I know is there, Paul, if you could start to unmute, is a professor in the iSchool and a co-director of the Information Policy and Access Center. He is also the brave general who lined us all up through the ALA reaccreditation process, which was, thank you, Paul, again, for all that wonderful leadership. I'm happy to introduce to you Dr. Paul.
Thank you, Keith. I want to start with a slight technical note so everyone understands why I'm just a disembodied voice. As a visually impaired person, my screen reader software really likes to join in if I'm trying to do something while in a Zoom call, and it's just very confusing to listen to. So Claudia will be advancing the slides. So that's just why I'm here in a slightly different format. So what I have the honor to get to do today is, this is really the first public discussion we've had of this, is tell you a little bit about a proposed new doctoral degree program that we are putting together at the iSchool. And it's really neat that we're unveiling it publicly at a ceremony honoring 2 alumni who are very much leaders in the field. So ties together really well. Claudia, could you go to the second slide, please? So this is also a fun, it's relevant, but a fun link here. This is from an article that was actually co-written by a couple of the people speaking tonight, but this sentence was contributed by Natalie Green Taylor, who is the director of the MLIS program at USF and also an alum of both our MLIS and PhD programs. So the reason why this quote is where we're starting is the idea of this new professional doctoral degree program is to fix, or at least help fix, a couple areas where we as a field have not served well the needs of the field. We have professional master's degrees, and then we have research PhDs. And there's nothing in between to help people who want to become leaders or who are leaders in the field to expand their education, not in terms of like taking continuing education units, but an actual degree. And the specific focus of this being a justice, inclusion, diversity, equity focus, it also is trying to help heal some of the areas where we as a field, in spite of at least some institutions really trying, still do not succeed, which is making those issues prominent in everything we do. Third slide, please, Claudia. So this program will be a doctoral degree that is aimed at people who already have a master's degree, but who are not thinking they want to be a researcher. We hope it will give a clear educational path towards leadership in our field. And when we say information organizations, we mean that very broadly. So it could be somebody who's built a career in public libraries and wants to become a director of a system, someone who wants to lead an archive, or something further from what you think of as maybe within our field as information institutions, someone who wants to be a leader in higher education or in development, or in the private sector, in research development companies, but not being a researcher. We see lots of potential avenues with this, government organizations, but the key thing being wanting to build a career path where you will be a leader in an organization that has an information focus. The lack of diversity in the information workforce, particularly at the leadership level, is another thing we hope this program will address. By having it focused on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion issues, not as an add-on, but as the core of the program, it will hopefully improve not only inclusion and equity within the organizations that these individuals lead, but will change their services, their products, their technologies, their outreach, their work with the communities they serve, and hopefully change what leadership looks like in our field. Fourth slide, please, Claudia. So why do we think we should be doing this? The iSchool, for those of you who weren't around when it started, and actually I wasn't either, but it was founded specifically with a mission of social justice as the focus of the college. And it took on many projects at its founding that were really brave and really made the field start to see how it dealt with these issues and change for the better. So this is the legacy of our iSchool, is social justice. And our particular strength in librarianship allows us to take those ideals into what the iSchool's ideals are as a very strong foundation for a program that is JEDI focused. And the reason why we can take that and turn it into something real is the fact that we have dozens, and that is not an exaggeration, we have dozens of full-time faculty members and staff members who work on these issues as their primary work. We have people focused on age, ability, race, gender, orientation, socioeconomic status, equity issues for all kinds of different types of information. All of these expertise, all of these passions will help give this program a real, authentic, fully baked in approach to equity and inclusion. And there is not a program like this, not only at another iSchool, but not at another anywhere. There are doctors in leadership that are professional degrees, none in our field, and absolutely none anywhere focused with inclusion at the core. So we are trying to build something here that is, there's a need and there is nothing there. Next slide, please, Claudia. So what we are envisioning this program to include are 7 3-credit hour courses that are all virtual and are designed so that you can take them in any order. We want this program to be something people can start at whenever they're ready and work through as quickly as they can. If someone were to take one course a semester, fall, spring, summer, for 3 years in a row, they would finish the content courses and the capstone work. If someone wanted to take multiple, they could do it in a year and a half. So it can be a 1.5 to 3 year program. JEDI issues will be central to the content of every class, not an add-on. And each class is designed so that the student can focus on the type of information organization they want to lead or currently lead. So all the content can be tailored to the best use of each student so that they can apply it to their current problems, or they can use it as a portfolio when they're on the job market. And so within this inclusion frame, the courses will deal with community engagement and collaboration, budgets, fundraising and grants, administration, outreach, evaluation and assessment, advocacy, policy, universal usability, and across everything, building and sustaining an inclusive and equitable organization. Next slide, please. The capstone this is where it gets different from thinking about the structure of a normal research doctoral degree. Instead of doing a dissertation, the capstone is actually 2 3-credit hour courses that you do as the end of the program. There will be a committee, there will be a culminating exam, but the main project will be a written case study on which they're applying what they learned in the program to an actual issue at an actual organization that has partnered with us. And they will give a final presentation of this as the end of the program, the culmination. And so what this would be, 33 credit hours, far different time commitment than a PhD. Not just different in content, but also this has been designed for people who are working full-time already. Next slide. So, of course, our primary audience, at least initially, are information-based professional masters. But the content would work for someone coming with any kind of professional background in a master's. From what we have designed, it would work beautifully if you were in public health, social work, education. And that, of course, isn't to say that it would be closed to someone who, say, has a master's degree in theoretical physics who wants to change their path in life. The main thing here is a professional goal of being a leader in an information organization of some kind and wanting to improve it for the better, to make it more equitable and inclusive. And last slide, please. So this is still under development. It's a really exciting idea, but it is still under development. The university shutting down and reopening hasn't really helped our progress. So we are still at this point where we need to get feedback from members of the iSchool community, potential employers. We need to have a committee put together which will take the sketches of the classes and turn them into actual course proposals. We have the raw materials, but we need to fill in details and specifics and then spend a lot of time asking the university to please let us do this. If everything goes into according to plan, we might be able to start this sometime in the 22-23 academic year. That's my hope. But whenever we do get it off the ground, it is going to be just hopefully fitting so many needs in one place. And if you have ideas and think of things, we will be reaching out to alumni and asking them to give us feedback on this as we go along. So please, you know, if you find this interesting when we ask for help, please think about actually helping. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for that excellent presentation on a program that you're leading wonderfully. So let's get on to the main part of the program. For more than 35 years, the iSchool has recognized exceptional individuals who excel in their field of expertise and provide value to the communities in which they serve. These recipients truly serve as inspirations for the generations of students who follow. Due to the COVID-19 outbreak last year, we were unable to host our annual event, which is why tonight we are bringing you a double feature. We'll be recognizing both the 2020 and 2021 alums of the year. So Claudia, do you want to share your picture? It is my honor to present the 2020 Distinguished Terrapin Award to an exceptional leader in librarianship. The winner of this award began his library leadership career as a director of the Detroit Public Library's flagship branch. He's held leadership positions at Florida State University, Boston College, and San Diego State University, and is a former dean of West Virginia University Libraries. In 2017, he became the dean of the Wayne State University Library System and the University School of Information Sciences, where he's committed to equity and inclusion and brings talented people from underrepresented communities into his organization. He is also the 83rd president of the Association of College and Research Libraries. I'm thrilled to present this award to our MLS alumnus, Dr. John E. Cawthorn, the class of 1993. John, let me hand it off to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Keith. And Paul, that program is really very exciting. You know, I got my PhD from Simmons University, and there is not another program like that. So I pledge my support to all of you there as you build this program, and anything that I can do to help you in this effort, I'm happy to do. If I was there in person with you, I'd be able to say hello to all my friends who are in the audience, Maureen Sullivan and Sue Bauman and Roy Jones. I mean, I miss all of you, and it's a real honor to follow you in getting this award. I remember my faculty that were there, Claude Walston and Paul Wasserman and Wendy Simmons. And of course, my uncle, who was the dean of the libraries at Howard University, William Cunningham. He was very instrumental in getting me there. Many of you may not know, but I graduated from the Evergreen State College, and they don't give grades, and they don't have majors. So when I applied to Maryland, I had a zero. And I didn't really do that good on the GPA either. So I had a 0 GPA and a very bad GRE score. And I was conditionally admitted. So all of you students that had that experience, I can tell you that we made it through just fine. But that's how I started at Maryland. And I remember I got a lot of support. And it was the first place that I remembered. My grandmother was a children's librarian at Prince George's County. And she used to give me these books to read. And it was really amazing. I would read these books, The Chocolate War and William, it was all these books, and I read them. And it wasn't until I got to Maryland and took a children's literature class that I realized she had been giving me all the banned books systematically. So I'll never forget that. And also, so one other story, I won't be long, Julius, but one other story is I thought that librarianship was about knowing everything, And so I remember I went out and bought the New York Times desk reference and read the whole thing. And I was ready for library school. And I showed up at the reference class, and the faculty member said, "We're going to teach you the categorization of information. And we're going to start with almanacs, and there's about 450, and we'll just start with the New York Times desk reference." So I had read one thing, and it just really kind of blew my mind. It still blows my mind today at how our profession is really about facts and knowledge and information. And we desperately need leaders to position these organizations for the future. What we need, what we have, people need. But I think the challenge is kind of how we're set up and what our values are and what we believe we've always done. And we have a great opportunity in the pandemic to kind of rethink everything. And I love this profession. I've been doing it for 29 years or so, and I can't imagine doing anything else. I love what I do. And so, I come at the end of the day and I'm like, I get to come back tomorrow and do this, that's how much I love it. So I thank you, Keith, and all the faculty at the school for this wonderful honor. And it's also really a privilege to be here and be recognized with Julius Jefferson, who I just admire to no end. I don't tell him that all the time because he just has kind of a big head already. So anyway, it's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for this great honor.
John, thank you. Thank you for those kind remarks. It's truly an honor to present you with this award and recognize significant contributions you made to the community. Thank you. Okay, let's go on to our second alum of the year. Claudia, do you want to show this one? Great. I'm delighted to present the 2021 Distinguished Terrapin Award to an exceptional librarian. He is the section head of the Congressional Research Service of the Library of Congress and the president of the American Library Association. He's a past president of the Freedom to Read Foundation, past president of the DC Library Association, and has served on the board of Black Caucus American Library Association, BCALA. He's a co-editor of the 21st Century Black Librarian in America and a passionate advocate for equity, diversity, and inclusion within the profession and throughout the society at large. It's my pleasure to present this award to our MLS alum, Julius C. Jefferson Jr., class of 2005. Julius.
Dean Marzullo, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Dean. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Before I make my brief remarks, I too want to give a shout out to a past president of ALA, Maureen Sullivan. I saw her name there, and all the other alumni. Thank you for joining us today. I want to first congratulate Dr. Carthorne for the 2020 iSchool Alumnus of the Year. Dr. Carthorne has served as a mentor and inspiration to so many of our colleagues, including me, And as you just saw, the thing I can say about John is that his positive attitude and enthusiasm for this profession is absolutely infectious. So if you didn't get that, then you weren't listening to him, because it's true. Everything he said and how he feels about this profession. Yes, that it is true, John, because I've heard you say that many times with that big smile. And he has said, I'm just so glad to be here, and I get to wake up and do this. And this is the part that he didn't tell you. He would always say, and they pay me for this too. And it's true. So John, I want to congratulate you again. And it's absolutely an honor and pleasure to be on a double bill with Dr. Cawthorn. So I also want to say that it's just quite an honor to be recognized by an institution that helps prepare you for a profession. It certainly helped prepare me for this profession. And like many of us, I certainly had highs and lows over the years since my time at what was Cliffs, now the iSchool. I want to just tell everybody, I don't remember a lot from Sorgel's class or any of the other classes I took, but I tell you what I do remember from my time at UMD Cliffs was that it's the job of the librarian to satisfy the user's needs. And that's how I show up every day, with an opportunity to satisfy the user's needs and be of service. And this is a service profession, so I will always carry that with me. But for the next few minutes, I want to show my appreciation for the opportunities and the individuals that encouraged me to grow as a student, colleague, and a human. So first, I want to thank one individual who I certainly would not have been at Maryland without her, and that's Dr. Arthur Wright. At the time I applied for the iSchool, interestingly, like John, I didn't have necessarily a great GPA or any of those things, but Dr. Wright was also my supervisor at the Howard University Libraries, and we called her the Doctor of Books, as a matter of fact, but I called her my champion. At the time, I believe that she was my biggest supporter of academic growth. She coached and guided me and encouraged me. And most of all, she really made me believe that I could make a positive influence in this profession. She knew I was on the fence about graduate programs. I thought that I was going to go into history, but she guided me to a program called the Chesapeake Information Research Library Alliance Fellows Program. It was a mentoring and education program for library school students from traditionally underserved ethnic or racial groups. And these individuals were to demonstrate an interest in research and academic library careers. And just to show you how small the world is, Maureen Sullivan's husband, Jack Siggins, was one of the mentors for this program. And I got to meet Jack and appreciate all the guidance and wisdom he shared over the years. One day, Jack and I get on that golf course, Maureen. But I will tell you, after being in that program, Dr. Wright was not my mentor, but she never stopped mentoring me. And for that, I certainly thank her. When I think about professionally, when I completed my studies in Maryland, I knew I wanted to work in one of two libraries. One was the Library of Congress, which I had worked on off and on since I was in high school. The other was Howard University, where I had been an undergraduate student. So I applied for a position at the Library of Congress. I went to work there, and I've been there ever since. I was hired by a lady named Sharon Butts, and she happened to be the wife of my high school mentor, Eugene Boyd. And I didn't really know Sharon, and she didn't really know me. She had no idea that I was so close to Eugene when I was in high school. I had gone by a nickname, and then by that time I was going by my first name. But it sort of came up later on that I knew her husband. But for the next 10 years, I had two mentors. My mentor from high school and I had Sharon, and they helped me grow at the Library of Congress. They mentored me, they guided me, they told me be quiet when it was time to be quiet. They told me to speak up when it's time to speak up. And for that, I am forever grateful for both of them. But I want to say that part of my biggest area of growth since CLIS has been in raising my children, where I have learned so much about myself through them. You know, raising humans taught me how to lead humans with compassion, respect, and it taught me to listen more than I talk. There was an former ALA executive director, Mary Geekus, who would always say that our goal should always be a way to say yes, not no. And certainly that has influenced me, you know, through my family. And that one thing that Mary Geekus said, always try to find a way to say yes as a leader in this profession. So, I mean, I just couldn't not share, you know, the growth and the individuals who helped me grow over the years, because sometimes you read a bio and you think the person just jumped out of the bio. Well, absolutely not the case for me. I didn't jump out the bio. It was a lot of work. But lastly, I want to say that in terms of institutional growth and in terms of the iSchool, I'm very pleased, Dean, I'm very pleased to hear about the new program, new doctoral program, because I think it is very, very needed and very needed right now. And so in addition to all the other great programs over the past few years, including, you know, the addition of the bachelor's program, which I was very pleased when that came about, the Center for Diversity, and Dean, the ALA lecture series, an agreement between ALA and the iSchool, which you have me working double duty on that next month. Thank you so much for that. But I'm pleased to see the engagement and certainly the engagement with the students. But it is hearing this new professional program today warmed my heart, and the Dean certainly knows why, for past conversations about a need going back a few years. So I will close by saying I hope to be a part of the growth that we're seeing at the iSchool, and I hope to be a part of developing the next generations of librarians and information professionals. And like John said, if there's anything I can do to help, I certainly want to be there. And again, thank you so much for this honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Julius, for your thoughtful words. It's truly a pleasure to present you with this award and honor to your work as a leader in the field of librarianship. The iSchool is proud and honored to recognize these exemplary alumni making a difference in their communities and in the field. Both the winners today champion diversity and inclusion and truly uphold the University of Maryland and iSchool's mission and values to create a culture of inclusion. Let me just also make a small personal statement. I came to the iSchool from the technology and information side of information science. And by far the greatest pleasure for me is to meet and learn from my new colleagues who have their roots in libraries, archives, and museums. And both Julius and John have been role models to me more than I think they know. Thank you for all the help you've given me. We'd now like to open this up for questions. Any questions or comments you'd like to share? You're welcome to drop them in the Q&A feature on your screen or use the raise your hand feature, in which case you'll be unmuted. And the first question, which I'm going to read, Paul, it's actually for you. Paul, Jane Myers would like to know how the needs of the program were identified for our professional PhD program, professional doctorate, excuse me.
So this is not a recent idea in terms of like, this is something that's been thought about for a long time. So we were able to think about it in light of what we knew from growing other parts of, well, particularly the MLIS, about identifying needs within the field. So it did start with the core of wanting it to be to fill the need for a professional doctorate for leadership in the field. And it was essential that it had the inclusion and equity focus at its core. And so, what we have as the preliminary content for the program has come from talking with people who are leaders now, talking with people who are doing leadership education in other fields, talking with some people about trends in higher education. I've done a lot of conversations with a whole lot of people to get to the point where we have the skeleton of the program built. So the needs are partly things that we've known from building other things, and partly a whole lot of research over the past 8-10 months.
Thank you.
Dean, I have a question. Is it appropriate for me to ask a question?
It's always appropriate for you to ask a question, Julius.
Thank you. So I have a question for Dr. Cawthorn. I would like, yes, that's right. So Dr. Cawthorn, could you share with us what it's been like leading ACRL over the past year, and also leading your home institution and some of the challenges? You've done double duty, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I told somebody the other day, it's almost like having 3 jobs. When I learned that I was going to be a candidate in 2018, and they would have told me and forecast for the future and said, you're going to be elected in president-elect in 2019, and during 2020, right in the beginning of the year, we're going to have something called a pandemic. We've never had that before, but it's going to cause a lot of disruption and everything. And I would have said, okay, sign me up, sign me up, because I think that this profession is really at a critical time to demonstrate how valuable we are from an interdisciplinary perspective, to see and help people see real problems that we need to solve. And we know from the challenges of just not being able to talk to one another, or the social justice issues that we're facing after George Floyd's death, this is systemic. So it's not about one trial or one person's guilty verdict. It's about something much larger than that. And we cannot drop the ball, and cannot stop thinking about how to change these systems and the way we think. But our profession is designed for that. Our profession is ready to help people rethink what they think they know. And that's what I love. Our purpose is about facts and knowledge and truth and information. And those are timeless. Those are timeless. We recently had somebody, a real public example of how you could be a leader, be in a leadership position and not be a leader. And that's why I say that it's really important that we focus on leadership now, because really leadership is about really having a vision of what you want to do, and then being able to communicate that to people who really don't see that same vision. I just gave a talk the other day, and I can imagine the people in my library wondering what I was talking about. I would say this, we're trying to create an organization for everybody, and then they would say, well, what about Bob? What about Bob in the department over there? He hasn't done anything for 5 years, and Susie, we shouldn't have hired her, so we have all these things that we put in front of ourselves before we can get to how do we work together. And then add on top of that, the fear for our own personal health. And this is another level of this time that's very remarkable. I would just say that in this time for ACRL, it's been really wonderful to recognize the exceptional work of the ACRL Excellence Award. We have just seen some really exceptional libraries. And one of the things that I got to do is call those directors and tell them that they won this award. And so I just appreciate that. And I have appreciated the support for the Diversity Alliance, which is a residency program in 3 years. And this has kind of grown through ACRL to include about over 60 institutions. So we really want to get experience for people to come into college and research libraries and then get on in their career. And that right there poses a little bit of challenges on both sides. But if we're not making any changes, if we're not doing anything different, we won't get any different result. You know what I'm talking about, Julius? So, so that's what we always need to keep in mind in our profession. And I appreciate that question. And I've been working really hard. So it's been good. It's been good.
I mean, I think if I could just say one thing, Dean, I think, you know, we're just so glad to have you lead at this time. I'm glad to have you, you know, a part of the team, the cohort this year of those who lead the association 2021. We'll never forget each other, I think, because we spent a lot of time with each other in this venue, not personally, but we have spent a lot of time talking about the issue. So thank you.
Thank you both. We have a question for both of you from Susan Winter. Susan asks, you both mentioned the importance of mentors in your lives. What advice would you have for mentors who want to be a positive influence?
John, I'll start off and I'll let you play cleanup. I know you'll knock it out the park. I'll just say that, you know, the idea of mentorship for me, because there are lots of programs and people try to pair you together, it's really organic, and it's really about, for me, an individual really taking a personal interest in the development of another individual. And I think that when we think that how can I, it's sort of like the idea of growing a flower. You know, you see yourself as soil, and then you pour the water and then the flower grows. If you think about that, how can I grow a flower? How can I grow another human being to be exceptional and have an impact on the profession? I kind of think about mentoring in that way. And I don't know if there's any one way to connect. For me, it just happened organically. The individuals that mentored me, it was just organic. For whatever reason, I was attracted to them. They were attracted to me, and they poured the water. And luckily for me, you know, there were some positive things to come out of it. But John, I'll let you play cleanup on that one.
Yeah, you know, what comes to mind is when I was coming up, there were a lot of people that served as mentors for me. And I thought at some point that I really needed more mentors. And I'll never forget, some of us had the real pleasure and honor to really know Peggy Sullivan. And if you never had a chance to meet her, she was one of the most genuine people in our profession. And I'll never forget, I went up to her in one conference city, I can't remember, but I just went up to her and I said, Peggy, I'm really interested in finding more mentors. And I wonder if you can help me identify some people to be mentors. And she looked at me and she said, well, John, I think it's now time for you to be a mentor. And that just really blew my mind right there, right? Because every time you think you're not ready for something, you probably are ready, you know, and it actually expands the people who can be mentors to people who need it. And we always need to look behind us and say, who are the people that need help? Who are the people in our program? Who are the people in our organizations that really could use just a little bit of question here and there, or a little bit of observation? Is this kind of what you mean when you say that? And we can all do that. So ever since that time, when I heard her say that, I have tried, as Julia said, to really look for those opportunities to share the story of me. Because I can tell you, Julius mentioned it a little bit in his, when he talked about his family and learning how to not speak, but listen. And I have to say, I've had the same similar experience, but I've had to grow in ways that I really did not even think I could grow to be in a leadership position. In order to be a leader, you have to know who you are. And that's a mess. That's a mess right there. But I can tell you that it's really worth the journey, and it's really worth the exploration, because you're kind of an example for people in the organization and in the profession. And that is meaningful too, because originally I thought the best thing we could be is a public library reference person, at the People's University. But in leadership, you actually have an opportunity to influence the whole organization, the whole culture of the organization. And that centrifugally goes out to the community, to the institution, to the city, to the world. And that's how our profession is going to save the world, really, is those simple acts.
Thank you both so much. We have a question from Angela Forrest. Angela is an iSchool alum. She graduated in 2013, and she's worked with Julius as a member of the DC Library Association. She says you're a great leader, by the way. Her question is, how has Julius and John used our country's racial justice issues in their library programming and interactions with the customers they serve?
John, you want Beauty to go first? That would be you.
Well, I'll go first. I'll go first because you can clean up better than I can. I think one of the things that I really appreciate about being in leadership is you can kind of set a new tone or a direction for an organization. And I remember when I got to Wayne State, I realized we needed a new mid-level managers group that could really help us think about ideas. And this was a new concept because we really didn't have this when I got here. And we redesigned it and kept learning and kept changing. And the chair always tried to get off the committee before he really even knew and understand how to lead that group. And when George Floyd was murdered, what happened was they had developed this way to integrate ideas such that we were able to think about how does our work relate to this moment in social justice. And so we were able to talk about, well, there's this group that formed in Detroit called Detroit Can Breathe. And that group now we're working with them to get their archives and put them in the Reuther archives, which is a labor archive that we're really, really proud of here. And as Elaine Westbrook says all the time, our receipts are in the archives. So all the things that people need to know, the social justice activists and the leaders, we really need to be proactive to tell them this has been the experience of Cesar Chavez or Walter Reuther or these people that have led before in these movements, and you all can learn from them. And I'll just say one other thing. When we use words like defund the police, I know exactly what they're talking about. But by saying that in the way that we say it, it can be misconstrued. It can be turned into something that it's not. And I think in the archives, we might have ways that they have dealt with this. And we can present these to the new generation of activists to help them kind of figure out how to make their best case and how to do their work to make change in this world that's very complex. And we left them with some very big challenges, but the answers are in our libraries.
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer, Angela, and hi, wish I could see you, but it's great that we're connecting in this space. Is a little different just because of where I work. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I was actually working, and I say the beginning of the pandemic, I'm mostly talking about last year around the George Floyd murder. I was working in public service. So that was leading the main reading room. And one of the things that we did right after that in programming was we began to respond to our primary client at the Library of Congress, which are members of Congress, and providing them with lunch hour webinars had never been done before about certain issues that dealt with African-American history. Juneteenth was one, the Tulsa riots was another, and members of Congress really wanted to have these conversations, and they wanted the conversations to be led by librarians that would provide them with resources and research to begin that conversation. So and I was happy that I was able to sort of pivot and provide that need that Congress was asking us for. But just the idea of racial justice, because someone had asked me this question, a question a couple of days ago about like what specifically have I learned about some of the events of the past year, certainly, some of the racial justice protesting that has gone on. And I had said that for me personally, I mean, these are issues that I can only affirm, that I certainly didn't learn anything about, that I've known about for the past 400 years and my read of US history and world history. And so it is always the case where I'm thinking about programming in terms of racial justice, whether it be in some limited way at my home institution, or whether it be through the association and some of the work we're doing with racial justice. I can tell you that with the idea of EDI and social justice sort of began when I was at ALA, sort of began when I was a board member several years back, where we made that one of the strategic directions of the association. So we kind of knew that this is exactly where we should have always been going, but we also know now that this is exactly where we need to be, and we need to be there in a very present way moving forward. And I think we're beginning to see that through a lot of our libraries. And I hope that the American Library Association is a part of getting people to move in that direction, including some of the work that they're doing in ACRL with equity and diversity and inclusion. So thank you for that question.
Thank you both. The next question is from an anonymous attendee. This person asks, what do you know now that you wish you had known when you started your career?
John, I guess I'll start that off. I'll say that when I started my career, as I spoke earlier, I was very narrow in my thinking about where I wanted to work. I said I either wanted to go work at Howard University or I wanted to go work at the Library of Congress. And unlike John, who had so many different experiences working in so many different types of libraries, I kind of wish that I had given myself the opportunity to explore librarianship broadly. And I didn't really get a chance to do that, and spent most of my career at one institution. It's a pretty big, large institution, but sometime at my institution, I can't necessarily see the impact that I have, that I could see at maybe a public library or maybe an academic setting. And so I kind of wish I had thought about that differently now as opposed to then. John?
Yeah, I was more narrow than narrow. Whatever Julius said, I was like a piece of hair. I was so narrow in my thinking. And one of the things I would say to myself back then is that the things that you see in the profession that need to be changed and the ideas that you have, they're actually good ideas. And I think I would also say that everything is going to work out. Because if you don't see people that have the same ideas as you kind of get anxious about, well, where is this going to place me in this continuum of this great profession? But we have such a wonderful spectrum of smart people in this profession that there is a place for each and every one of you that come to the profession. And that's what I would say. Julius and I have been doing this for a long time, and whether we stayed at one institution or moved around quite a bit, it's always been such a pleasure to go and represent librarianship. And I'll also say that one of the people that really inspired me, several people, were African-American males. John Tyson was one. E.J. Josie was another. And these people, colleagues that you may not know as I say their names, but they were gigantic in our field. Robert Wedgeworth, Emily Mobley, all these people really helped me, helped Julius, gave of their time. And that's what I hope that I do for people that ever come and want to talk to me, because I remember that they made time for me. Hardy Franklin, I mean, I could go on and on. Hardy Franklin was the director of DC Public Library, and my grandmother called him to get an appointment because his secretary at the time really didn't let anybody see Hardy. And he spent an hour and a half with me talking about his career, and I'll never forget that. And so I always try to do the best I can to make sure I make connections with as many people as possible. And I just say to them, don't thank me, just do it for the next person that you see that really needs some help. Yeah.
Thank you both. Shanti Burns Simpson asks, first, she comments, I really appreciate listening and learning from you both this evening. What's your vision for yourselves professionally in the next 5 years?
I'll start that off first. Shantae Burns Simpson, she is the current president of the Black Caucus of the American Library Association. And I want to say, Shantae, certainly thank you for your leadership and your advocacy for librarianship, specifically Black librarianship as president of BCLA. So I appreciate the question, because I think John kind of answered the question a second ago when you talk about my vision. Certainly in the next 5 years, I want to be able to inspire folks. As John said, he was inspired by many of those individuals he had mentioned, from EJ to Dr. Wedgeworth and others. Absolutely want to see myself contributing in that way. I mean, as far as like my professional career or what I may do, I mean, certainly, having another title or having working somewhere else, that would be great. But, I don't think you can really build a legacy on a title or a job. I think you build a legacy, as John just spoke about, by influencing and growing others in the profession. And I can tell you that Shantae, and you know this, I spoke about Black male librarianship going back, quite some time. And even where I work at the Congressional Research Service, I remain the only Black male librarian there. And I think that, maybe I'm not doing enough to be able to bring someone in to be able to make a contribution there. And certainly, in some of these spaces need some work, so we can bring folks in there and then so they can sustain a career. But that's where I feel like my focus is professionally, in doing that work, not necessarily looking to grow my own professional career. And then finally, I'll say that listening to the presentation about the program, the new doctoral program today, maybe that is something that I will undertake if the opportunity presents itself in the next 5 years. I'll stop there, John.
Yeah, this is a really difficult question for me because the way I think, I think that one of the things I really want to do is make sure that I'm an example as a leader for other leaders. Okay, so I want to work in a way that says that this fella that's at Wayne State, he's been able to create an organizational culture that allows us to think about doing things differently, and he's actually been systematic in the way he's done it. That's rather been irrefutable. Like he's got some results from the way that he's thought about and talked about transformational change within organizations. And I think in the next 5 years, I'd really like for Wayne State to be an example of a library that's made that transition. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm excited too about continuing to talk about this in larger groups to our profession about the real important work that we're going to do in academic and research libraries. You know, faculty write articles and they send them to vendors and we buy all that stuff back. You know, that doesn't make any sense. That's goofy. So why can't we work together to create new platforms for interdisciplinary research? Why can't we work together to think about how to solve some of these very big problems in our world? Now, I just mentioned things that are so big, you say, oh my gosh, well, how's he going to do that in 5 years? Well, first, we're going to start tomorrow. And we just keep going like that. And before you know it, 5 years will be here and 10 years will be here, and we will have changed things. I'll mention this, that you remember Wikipedia? When Wikipedia came out, librarians actually lost their minds. You know, they said, how can you have a free encyclopedia? And do you know Wikipedia is a resource that's searched 250 million times a day and 500 million across the world. And it is an amazing research and I would say that the perception and the culture around how we think about Wikipedia has changed, okay? And that is the type of thing that I'm talking about, big cultural shifts in how we believe and what we believe about resources that we have, and it just takes time. So I think it's going to take longer than 5 years, but I'm gonna be a stake in the ground where people can look and say, okay, I see kind of where that's going, and I'm excited about it, I hope.
All right, it looks like somebody is raising their hand. Frederick Augustin, I'm going to unmute you so that you can give your comment or question. You are now unmuted. Well, not unmuted, you can talk. So you can unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question.
I actually proposed a question in the Q&A, not in the raise my hand.
Okay.
Keith Marzullo did respond to it, and I will take his advice. But he responded privately. So if you want to answer my question publicly, you can do that, sir.
Well, thank you. Actually, I don't know how your hand got raised, but that's why we called on you. But yeah, so Frederick wanted to know whether he can have his degree that's an MLS be converted to an MLIS, because that's how we renamed the degree, and we're going to look into that. So please send me an email message on that. Happy to work on that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for our alums of the year?
Here's a question, Dean. When do I get that really nice looking plaque?
Oh, yes, we're going to mail it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we'll be doing that soon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Again, I wish we could have done this in person. This is. I think we're out of questions. So let's have a round of virtual applause for our Tulum of the Year. I've been learning to do this. Jazz hands. And thank you very much. And thank you all for attending this event, being a great audience. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening. We look forward to seeing you in person in a future iSchool event, but I am going to mention 2 more events coming up. On May 2nd on Sunday, we have the McLeod Lecture. That's going to be at 4:30. That's a virtual event. All these are virtual. And as Julius mentioned, on May 6th at 1:30, we're having the inaugural ALA lecture with Julius Jeffson. Thank you again for doing this, Julius. You're a wonderful person for us. So I'll wrap it up. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you for attending.